Large-scale combat in any tabletop role-playing game can be tricky. GameMasters here, and today I've got 8 great tricks to help you, the Dungeon Master, the Game Master, the Storyteller, to manage large combat encounters in your game. Plan ahead. This is key. Most large-scale combat scenarios are just that, scenarios. Rarely do they just happen with spontaneity. Usually we plan for them to happen, but in this planning stage, make notes of things like terrain. What cover exists? Will this be in a forest or in a town or somewhere else? A good plan can help keep large-scale combat stress free. A good plan also allows you to thread the story into the hows and whys of the large-scale combat, why it's taking place in the first place. And I'll have a little bit more to say on this a little bit later in the video. Use a battle map, an actual physical map, or even terrain on your table complete with miniatures is always helpful in a large-scale encounter. Simply put, it provides a visual to everyone as to where everything is. That visual removes questions like, how far away am I from cover, or how many enemies are in front of me and beside me, which can slow the encounter down. You don't have to use those expensive miniatures either. You can use pennies or paper clips or whatever you may have to represent the players and armies. We've even used chits and tokens from other game systems. Use group initiative. Group similar enemies together on the same initiative to make combat a bit more streamlined. If you have a squad of, say, orcs here and a squad of trolls here, have the orc squad go all on the same initiative and then have the squad of trolls go on their own initiative, as opposed to having each individual orc within this squad making their own initiative and rolls and moving independently from every other member that's in that specific squad. Use group hit points. Similar to the group initiative, give the entire squad a group hit point value, as opposed to trying to calculate the numbers for each individual in that squad. This can greatly speed up combat, but will also give the players a large sense of epic battle, as their weapons and spells wipe out multitudes of monsters at once. It also plays heavily into the "this is cool" and will give the players something to remember. Simplify enemy abilities. Limit the number of abilities and spells that the enemies can use. I'm not suggesting that you remove all abilities or spells, just the ones that will slog down the battle. Don't remove them from your players. They still need to have their full options. But in the late game of the battle, if you feel that the large-scale encounter isn't challenging enough, pull out the general and let that combat go into full detail mode. But as for the individual squads, the monsters themselves, they don't need access to every ability that they might normally have. That's a surefire way to slow combat down. Of course, use your judgment as to what's appropriate to not let them use and what isn't. Use pawns. Use more weaker monsters than stronger ones. That's not to say to not use strong monsters, but we all love epic. Nothing says epic better than seeing an entire swath of monsters crumble or go up in flames all at once. Weaker monsters allow for this. You'll still want the stronger ones in there for the challenge, but the weaker ones, they can provide to the players that sense of accomplishment, that they're making a dent in this overwhelming opposing army. Now, these last 2 tips can make your large-scale battles to be remembered. Narrate combat. This is where you can let the players really shine. Just as you narrate what the monsters are doing, allow the players to go crazy and narrate their own combat moves. Okay, it breaks down like this. After the rolls have been made and you have confirmed that a squad of monsters is about to just kind of drop out of existence, let it go into cinematic mode. We've all seen massive epic battles in movies. Take Lord of the Rings, for example. We watched as the Oliphants, with the swing of their tusk, wipe out swaths of the Rohan army, who were all on horseback. Then in Return of the King, we watched as Legolas bound and sprung across the Oliphant and dispatched of it with 3 arrows. Let your players describe those epic actions that their characters did. Yes, they killed the Oliphant, but instead of just saying, okay, you killed it, what do you want to attack next? You let them describe how they killed one of the larger elements of the big battle. Lastly, keep the story moving. Yes, you are in big combat mode, but it's also important to keep the story itself moving forward. This is what I was talking about earlier. The story that the players have been playing has led them to this very point, to this massive battle. Something put them here. The story put them here. They didn't just happen across 2 armies fighting at random. Use what put them here to help you move the story forward. This battle is a part of their story. Take advantage of that and keep the story active while they fight. If you're unsure of how to maintain the story in combat, you got to go back to our first tip about planning. Plan to have certain events or certain monsters trigger a cutscene in which you take over and let your DM skills shine and the art of telling the story. If you can combine each of these tips into your massive large-scale battles and encounters, your players will walk away with a fight that they will remember and talk about for years. What are some tips or tricks that work well for you that you've used in the past for large-scale combat? I want to share that with everybody watching. Just let me know down in the comments. And until next our paths cross, may you not get wiped out by an Oliphant or a fire giant or a Dracolich or a Tarrasque.